In this video, I'm going to talk about Martin Luther King's fourth principle of nonviolence. And this is one of the most difficult of the principles, I think, for many people. In Dr. King's words, he wants nonviolent resistors to be prepared to accept suffering without retaliation for the sake of their cause. He means suffering, if we think back to the civil rights movement, he means suffering in the sense of getting beaten up by segregationists and possibly the police. He means a willingness to go to jail as a consequence for engaging in civil disobedience. And I think more generally, this is one of the areas where Dr. King wants his followers to be realistic. He does not want them to be dogmatic idealists. He wants them to understand that in the real world, we have to pay our dues. And if you're going to do something important and controversial, you may be opposed by rather powerful forces. There is also some religious language that attaches to Principle 4. I don't teach nonviolence from a religious perspective. I try to make my discussions of it grounded in psychology and broadly acceptable to people from many religious backgrounds and non-religious backgrounds. But there is this phrase, suffering is redemptive, which comes from the Christian tradition. And I think it's meant to convey the idea, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, but I think it's meant to convey the idea that if a person suffers, if a just person, a good person suffers, they will eventually be rewarded. When Dr. King talks about Principle 4, though, he refers to a more psychological interpretation, in my opinion. He talks about the educational value of suffering. He expects that in many cases, the fact that one of his followers suffers and is witnessed suffering, that has educational value, that may soften the hard hearts of segregationists and get them to think twice about how important the nonviolent social movement is. And what he's tapping into there is something that psychologists understand very well, which is that all of us are role models. We are role models whether we want to be or not. Other people are observing us. And people observing other people is called observational learning. It's one of the primary ways that we learn a lot of the things that we know. We get ideas from other people about what things that we can do. And we also derive lessons from what we observe about issues that are important or not important. I think Dr. King's thoughts here are going along the lines of suffering can illustrate how important these issues are and cause a change of heart in some of the people who witness the suffering. Now, we have found that in working with different groups of people, the word suffering itself is sometimes a real problem. For example, working with police officers in a police academy, for example, or working with corrections officers in a professional development workshop. in a prison, which we've done a couple of times. The word suffering is a problem because in professions where part of your job involves the potential use of force, the culture doesn't allow you to take a blow. Police are not in the business of taking blows the way Dr. King is advising his followers might be necessary. But we have found that with populations like that, with groups like that, like police, the word sacrifice is a perfectly good substitute. Many people go into police work because they want to serve the community. They want to, and they're willing to sacrifice in order to honorably serve other people. That motivation is in there in a lot of police officers, and it's very important to understand that that it's in there. One of the things that allows a police officer to accept nonviolent ideas and apply them within the latitude that they have carrying out their job is to use a vocabulary like sacrifice that they can attach themselves to. And for my purposes, the word sacrifice works just as well as the word suffering in teaching Principle 4 and in trying to put it into practice. So Principle 4 is a little tough for many people. It is one of the hardest principles to accept, especially for people whose self-image is of being really tough and not taking any crap, excuse the expression, from other people. Principle 4 is the principle that embodies this ancient notion of turning the other cheek in the face of cruelty, or in the face of bullying, or in the face of an enemy. But as we can see from Dr. King's discussion of it, it has a purpose, and it's largely an educational purpose. It also touches on, although in Stride Toward Freedom, where Dr. King introduces the principle, he doesn't really talk there about self-defense very much. But self-defense is addressed in other places in his writings. And Dr. King doesn't reject self-defense. He knows that it might be necessary when you have to use force to protect your own life, and it's not serving an educational purpose, and your survival might be at stake. Of course, you may need to defend yourself. And that means that a person who practices nonviolence should be capable of defending themselves. They should keep themselves healthy, and they should keep themselves strong. It seems paradoxical, but in order for nonviolence to have value, it should be consciously practiced by a person who could use violence and chooses not to do so. If people claim to be nonviolent only because they're weak and they can't use violence, that's not worth a great deal. So Principle 4 gives us lots to think about. If you have found this interesting, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. I would appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.